Okay, we are live. I hope. I'm checking YouTube. Yeah, it looks
Just
like we
did.
are live.
Yep. We are.
Excellent. Excellent.
Trust but
Okay.
verify, baby.
All right, we are good. Yeah, I'm making sure that's very accurate. I don't want anybody to make a video about how anything I say is okay. I'm not even going to get into that right now. Welcome to the stream.
Heyo.
Welcome to the stream, everybody. We have some special guests today. We have Tom Lawrence here, blessing us with his presence today for the first time ever on a Raid Owl stream. Thank you so much, Mr. Tom Lawrence, for joining. And we also have Rich from Two Guys Tech, his second time, the first person to appear multiple times on a Raid Owl stream. Congratulations. I'll send you some Raid Owl points in the mail. But I appreciate you guys hopping on. We have some fun stuff to talk about.
Because everybody loves Unifi.
Yeah, I know, and that's the title of the stream. So we obviously have to talk about it. Who do we have in the chat right now? Who's sitting here anxiously waiting? We have Mr. Will Smith, welcome. Jason, welcome. Dan, Ultralife, Noah, Cody is in here, way past his bedtime, but apparently not past my bedtime. Still have to get to work and finish a G5 Pro video. Yeah, that's Mr. Unifi himself. I knew he couldn't resist hop. Yeah.
Cody's always a wonderful resource. I always reach out to him. If I have a question, I know he'll have the answer. Because I had questions about the door access system recently, and like, boom, he knew exactly what he had the answer lined up. I didn't have to Google. He's faster than Google at that.
I told him when he came on the stream that he was one of the reasons why I'd actually switched to Unifi. So I thank him and also curse him at the same time whenever I have issues with the Unifi stuff. Your PCMD, welcome. Mr. Matt Sargent, there he is. Welcome to the stream. I think everybody got a shout out. KP, what's up? Craig, what's up? Oh, God, I'm not going to be able to say that name. I apologize. Sven Young, I tried, dude. Welcome. Justin, I can say that one. 360 Mining, welcome. We have a fun stream today. We are going to be talking about Unifi, as I said in the title, and it's not entirely random. I didn't just wake up and decide let's talk about Unifi. I actually switched recently from PFSense to Unifi in terms of the gateway, and I have some thoughts. It's been a thing. So I'd initially gone with PFSense, and I'd used Tom as a resource. I'd watch his videos a lot to get set up with PFSense
as well. I think you even did an HA proxy video, right?
I did, yeah. And to get into PFSense, like that was I watched a lot of Tom Lawrence videos, let's say, to get set up with that, and I've been happy with it. I didn't switch for disliking PFSense, but when you're a YouTuber and you got to try things out, what better way than to switch? So I know you guys have some Unifi experience, right? So
Indeed.
You guys want to tell us your initial thoughts?
I think Rich should start because he's got opinions on that Dream Machine.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to start. Thank you. I was one in the beginning when it was really excited that it was coming out. I was like, this is great. This is awesome. I want to go back to appliance. I was using PFSense at the time way back when, and I bought it and I got it home and opened the box and used it and then put it back in the box and sent it back to him because I thought it was terrible. And I struggled with it, and I gave it, I should say I gave it an honest go, but man, it was just too much of a departure from the standard firewall experiences and expertise that I had been growing for years and years, and I bailed pretty quick.
Yeah, you could call it the UDM or Unified Disappointment Machine. I think this is
I wish I had like a soundboard for that one.
I know that's pretty good. We need a for it.
Right? Yeah, really.
The rules in it are so, and especially you had it a while ago, correct? So how long ago did you return yours, Rich?
It's when the first UDM Pro came out.
So it's been
a long time. So I mean, yeah, for sure. I know that there's been major changes and improvements to the feature set and the user experience, but
the rules are hard to get over because they're just not coherent. That's the probably way to put it. I struggle with the way they do the rules in there as well, because once you've used other firewalls, and I know you have some experience like Palo Alto.
Yeah.
there's a more concise way the rules flow, and that's not the way they flow. The way the object stuff works inside the Unified Firewall, it's still just more clunky. It's not as it reminds me though. I mean, SonicWall does this a bit. I really am not a fan of SonicWall either. It's just not an easy way to manage a firewall rule set, I think.
Yeah, I know when you compare it to the even all of them basically typically follow the concept of, you're running through a filter set, and when you hit a filter or hit a rule that says pass or fail, it does the thing, and there's a default catch-all at the bottom. It's really easy from anyone's perspective just to look at the list and go, okay, that one, oh, okay, and catch it. But that's the way all the big guys do it still, and that's how PFSense does it too. Is it's a pass fail, and it's just not sure what they were thinking by deciding to redesign the approach.
Well, in the early days, part of the problem is they were so obsessed with let's be such a different company that they came up with the weirdest ways of doing VPN. That's the part that was really like, I could never recommend it because their VPN for a while had a tie in to their UID cloud, which why would my open VPN need to go to the cloud to talk to the cloud to come back and pull a config out that you download from the cloud from my firewall? I can't fathom that. And then they didn't have cloud registration forced on the UDM. Then they switched it to you couldn't register your UDM. You couldn't activate it. And they had a cloud outage that was over 24 hours. So no one could get their firewalls working, which was amusing. And they finally made a big announcement like, hey, we've removed, celebrate. We've removed and made it so you don't have to force register these things. So they've had a really rocky road on the whole path to it, which is, it's like they're trying to catch up now with the latest 3.0 whatever releases with them, but it's been a long journey of stupid, and still the firewall rules remain unusual with the way they work.
I don't understand it. So Mark says, same, I set up a PFSense on a mini PC last week running Unifi AC Pro AP through the controller on my NAS. As a home user, man, the improvement over ISP junk is unreal. I mean, compared to your ISP, like the Unifi, ecosystem is, I'd say, obviously compared to that, pretty solid. And then the fact that you're running PFSense as your main gateway, that's the way to go. And that's what I ran for a while. I did a video, like I upgraded to Unifi, but it wasn't the gateway. It was everything downstream, switches, access points. And I liked it. I had PFSense as my gateway, handle all the firewall rules. It made sense. And I will say, like, when I first dove into PFSense, it was pretty intimidating because it's not like, sexy like Unifi or like Omada or like these. It's pretty bare bones and can be intimidating. But once you use it for a bit, I felt it was extremely intuitive, especially the firewall rules. And then going to Unifi, where I'd experience, with not their gateway, everything else, and it was decent. It looked good. I liked the stats, and so I threw my my UDM Pro in, which was literally sitting in a box for almost a year. No lie, just sitting in a box in my office. And I was like, finally, I'm going to deploy this. And I was like, oh, cool. Look at all these cool stats I can see. Let me go recreate my firewall rules. And that's when I just was like, what? There's no way. I was literally like looking through documentation, like looking up things on YouTube. Like, I have to be missing something here. Like, there's no way this is how they implement firewall rules. And I'll share like a little peek of mine. Like, going from something like PFSense, where you can see everything, like all your firewall rules broken down by each network and what's coming in, what's going out, what ports are being used. This is just a hot mess. Like the default ones combined with the ones you created, and the fact that here's your rules and you can't even see what ports that it's even talking about.
And you can't see it on a mouse over either, can you?
No, there's no like tooltips, no hover over. You have to click on it and go in. And this was the funniest part to me, is like, oh, you want to open ports? Well, you can't just enter a port. Like I can't enter 443 right here. Like you have to create a port group.
Yeah.
So you have to literally create a group for a single port. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I guess that's how they do it. Whatever. At least give me the option to see the ports on the main screen. And then I scroll down to at the bottom they have port forwarding, which does display ports. So it's just like the inconsistency of some of this stuff that it's just blowing my mind as to why it's designed that way.
And that's where I think pfSense did a good job of being the best of both worlds, because you can just type a port in pfSense, just type it in there, no problem.
Mhm.
Or you can create port groups with an alias. So if you have one of those use cases where, and we've had a couple clients where we really had to build out the rules extensively to just a lot of the things they have, we'll create a series of aliases under Firewall, so we can just put all the groups in there and then assign them as an alias. But even when you do that, mousing over the rule still gives you the ports that are all grouped in alias. It's all nice mouse over and clean, so you can still see whatever's in that alias. And to go a step further with the aliases, you can even put URLs in the aliases and it will pull information out of them. That's how it manages things like if you wanted to set a list of IPs to block, you can put them up in GitHub and have the raw URL in there and drop it in, and it can query and pull those. Like all those little advanced features add up a lot. And especially if you, I would say really with the home lab people, especially, you get into that. You are like, hey, I have this use case for doing this, and it makes it like more flexible.
This is a good, this was a wrong one. This is a good point. I remember, I was like, there's something else that I remember was annoying as hell. Most annoying thing about Unifi is the fact that you can't add multiple source IP addresses for a port forward. That is extremely annoying because when you create a port forward, it essentially opens the port for that and then forwards it. But up here where I can create an alias, essentially, like if I want to open up 443 for Cloudflare and I have an alias for all Cloudflare server IP addresses, I can't do that in the port forwarding. It won't let you. Like from is either any or limited, and limited's like, oh, source, you get one IP address.
So you have lots of multiple rules, basically. That's what you've got.
It's so insane, the difference between two features on the same page. Like, why? Why? It's mind-blowing to me. Like, this is a big company that does, like, this is what they do. Why is it so bad?
And it's like you're on the edge of greatness is how I feel like Unifi sits. Like, we're going to make these incredible access points. We're going to make these good switches. We're going to give you a self-hostable controller with no licenses, and you can manage it. By the way, our controller is multi-tenant. I just did a video on that topic because everyone realizes how to set it up. And we have 80 customers in a single controller, you know, all external customers being managed, all these amazing features. But the reason we don't use your firewalls is because of all the disappointment that it causes, because it's just hard to manage if you have any type of edge case. So squaring up on pfSense as like our general install for all these people just makes my life so much easier.
So let me ask you, Tom, when you look at Ubiquiti's product offerings, you can see the tiers of their focused customers, right? The enterprise stuff's clearly for enterprise customers. Who is the UDM actually for then?
I just don't know. I want to say it is a good fit. We run into, just through the consulting side, a lot of small, let's say 4-person insurance office, that small little mom and pop business, restaurants have it, lots of places like that. And one thing I will say, one, they never need port forwarding. They're like, we just need the internet to work. Yeah. Second is it has auto update. And that is a strong reason, because if we install the pfSense, which does not auto update, it will, the last update that machine will receive is the last time we work on it. You know what I mean? Because they're not going to call us to go, hey, wondering if this pfSense needs a new version. But if we're going to consult and set something up for someone, we'll generally try to turn on auto updates for the UDMs. And I think that's a great idea. This is especially for the home users, because, you know, my daughter has a UDM at her house because she just wants the internet to work so she can play games. She's not particularly techie, and she's just like, and Tom doesn't, I don't worry about my daughter's stuff. It just auto updates. And if it doesn't auto update, I'm sure she'll call.
Yeah, that's an interesting proposition because from the enterprise side of things, especially with the recent FortiGate debacles that have been going on, like the security world has been really heavy on weighing over this. Why not just force updates onto firewalls? And it's an interesting. I didn't know that the UDMs did that. Anybody else does not. Like, it doesn't matter who you are. Your firewall's not going to take an update because it might break, right?
Yeah.
Or there might be something that's changing that now half your rules don't work, or your VLAN routing through your on a stick's not working. So that's interesting. I didn't know they had. That's one positive. I wish everything just automatically did it. But do you think that they're really testing? Like, do they have a good QA department that they've gone through iterations before they push out that update?
I think they have a QA department now. I got in this discussion with someone because they certainly, I would strongly say you, audience, were the QA department.
They in Unifi just got rid of their it's not called beta early access program. Yeah. They just got rid of it. It's gone now. So I don't know why. I don't think they ever came out and made a statement as to why. I mean, maybe they did.
It wasn't clear. They just weren't doing it anymore. Just like some changes they made internally. I remember Cody did a video on it, but it wasn't like they had bullet point. At least I don't recall any bullet pointed reasons for that. You can still, though, and it's still referred to as early access. If you go into UDM, you can set it to be like, what version would you like, the normal release or early access?
Yeah.
And I think Cody's got a good point. If you have some small businesses that, if they're not going to need VPN, and a lot of small businesses, they don't have any port forward rules. Maybe they have a video recorder doing, hopefully it's going to be instead of Synology, it's going to be something like a UDM, because you can set your cameras up on there, and you don't really have any rules to set up for that because it'll loop through their cloud system. So if that's that small business use case, that small restaurant, that small little law office, then, and if their workload is all in the cloud, they're not forwarding any ports, so it probably would be a good fit for a lot of those people.
And it's got to be like an easy sell too, because of the ecosystem that you just mentioned with the cameras. Like, oh, you want network, you want like a nice dashboard, you can look at all your stuff, you can look at it, you can not look at it, who cares? But then you get the cameras, you want a security system, integrated in,
door control.
Door control as well, all that integrated in. I think that's an easy sell. And I think that's the weird disconnect that people see is like you have like the access and the protect with the cameras, which are kind of focused towards businesses, right? And then you have these people who, and you made a good point, is like if you just need access, you're a coffee shop, whatever, you're not opening ports. But if you're a business that needs more of that, then you're, I guess, like you said, Tom, you can deploy Unifi stuff just without the gateway. Just ignore the gateway, throw something different in there. But that is weird that they have all this good stuff downstream, but their gateways are just
And someone on the team brought up the USG down in the comments there, and same problem. It's the USG suffers from the same silly interface. Well, the USG, you hopefully you're talking about the USG Pro, because the other USG is past end of life, but still being sold. I think it's got some real limitations.
Yeah. So that brings me into, I get this question a good bit. I don't know. I'm sure you guys get it. When people, I do a video on anything. Like I've done, why is it doing this? I've done videos on Omada. I've done videos on pfSense, Unifi, most recently, the name's slipping me right now, and people ask, okay, so what do you recommend then? What do you recommend? And I have to say, like, there's so many caveats to that. Like, are you just a single person in an apartment, or do you have a business? Like, are you a power user? What are your requirements for a network? So I was wondering, do you guys get that question often, and how do you answer that?
Well, you basically touched on it I think we all probably collectively get that multiple times a week, and the short answer is, what do you want to do with it, right? Like, what's your actual plan? Is it just so you can stream to your PC and play Baldur's Gate or something like that? If that's the case, then we'll make it easy on you, right? And give them a wireless access point all in one, something like that, little UDM trash can if you're going to do something like that. Not that I'm recommending that per se, but something simple. But like in the business world, it always comes down to like risk and control and what sort of things you want to try to protect and maintain, right? Like the big guy stuff, like Tom mentioned me in Palo Alto. Like one of the big things that we use big gear like that for is for SSL inspection, right? It's got to have the horsepower to take in encrypted packets and blow them apart, inspect the data, and then re-encrypt them and send them to the customers or the user as fast as possible. Those are like another tier of the kind of firewall stuff that people use. So you wouldn't want to recommend that to your parents, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So you guys have way more experience on the business side. I don't have very much, if any. I assume it comes so in business, like small to I guess maybe larger businesses. What is like the common? What's the go-to in terms of network?
There's a ton of Cisco, Aruba, the HP Aruba stuff's out there. The Cisco stuff is so old, but it's still just like we have a few government, city contracts, and Cisco just dominates that place.
Oh, yeah.
It's always so dated. That's usually why they're calling us, because hey, these Ciscos, they went end of life about 4 years ago. We're gonna replace them finally because our insurance can't get renewed anymore.
And it probably comes down to like experience, because when you have to hire people to manage all this stuff, Cisco's been around for so long, and I guess it's been the standard for so long that so many people know how to do it. If you've been in the network field, then you know Cisco, so it's easy to hire people who know Cisco. So
that's actually where Unifi came along and changed it. And I can already see Rich is about to make a face because they made VLANs easier. And so,
They did, just not for me.
yeah. Well, it's hard because for the first time users, it's easy to understand VLANs on Unifi. For the old Cisco people, the people who are trained to have CCNAs, they're like, why are they doing it this way? And there's a lot of grunting and cringing of it. Mm-hmm. But to the extent I think the market kind of needed something like that, because that was part of the problem of, sure, you could hire a Cisco engineer, but the Cisco engineers, especially years ago, were few and far between. So they always demanded a really high level of pay due to their scarcity. The Cisco of old is the cybersecurity person who makes a ton of money today. Cisco engineers don't get paid what they used to. Comparatively, they get paid well, but I've actually seen it not to be quite the same compared to what it was, where a Cisco engineer was like the person, man. They rolled up in their Mercedes. And
yeah, we'll say walking through at my company, I work in IT, but not in the network side. But we share floors in the same building, and anytime I walk by like a network room, it's just piles and piles of like old Cisco switches, just ready to be, I guess, gotten rid of. Like,
yeah.
And so I guess that makes sense when you said Cisco stuff, because I do see that all the time, and we're a pretty large company. So I guess that answered my own question: is what are larger companies using?
There's also a good why for the Cisco, and someone did this video, and I think I shared it on Twitter, but if you type up history of Cisco picks, there's this YouTube channel that put together just a aha moment of all of some of the things that Cisco was in charge of and where the PIX firewall came from. So they were the people, not exactly who invented NAT. Cisco bought the company that invented and built NAT. Mm-hmm. So you can also hate them for, if we didn't have NAT, we would have to have IPv6, but here we are. And so the whole history of that's really interesting, but because they kind of solved this enterprise problem, Cisco bought this technology from this group of people, and it became the Cisco PIX firewall, which was the NAT device. And that kind of sent Cisco on a major trajectory. They went from we're a small player, but I guess probably big even at the time, to the powerhouse that is Cisco, and everyone had to have one. That firewall is still in use somewhere, all in a closet, and amazingly, it still works.
Yeah, and I think that there used to be an old adage that I think is still said, especially in the big business and lines of government, and that is, no one ever got fired for buying Cisco.
Yep.
So they had that
IBM of the networking world.
Yeah, you get that stuff, and like Tom mentioned, you can have it run in a closet, and it'll run forever, typically. And you don't get all the neat features. And nowadays, with security being a bigger issue, and you need to keep up on those firmware updates for those switches as well. But yeah, it's interesting. I've been through a bunch of different companies have used all variety of different stuff. Back in the days of like Brocade, when Brocade was not just a fiber channel switch, and they also made Ethernet switches before Broadcom bought them out and killed the product line, and Cisco stuff and Extreme Networks was still making stuff too. So there's a lot of different options out there for enterprise level stuff. They all, though, the one thing that they do all share is if you get to their UIs, because Cisco was first with the most successful, the iOS command line sort of approach is very much the used across all these different systems. So you kind of know how to get around them, even if you've never touched them before, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, if you learn Cisco iOS, you can figure out the adjacent ones, even things like MikroTik. It's still a similar functionality where they work. And until more recently, the first generation, not the second gen, if you go into a Unifi switch and type telnet localhost, you can get into a very similar interface. I was actually upset when they removed this. If you went into their first gen 10 gig switches that Unifi had, you can get port statistics, you can get link, you can even get like cable length.
I want that stuff. I don't know why you would remove it.
Yeah, and when they went to the next generation, it all vanished, and it was a shame because it was they built it on top of Vios, a fork of Viata. Before Vios, there was Viata, and they based it on when Viata went defunct. That's actually some of the core that was in there. The edge switches still had it, but the Unifi switches were edge switches with another layer on top for the Unifi controller for central management and no web interface chips on there. But you could still SSH into them. Then you would telnet localhost, and you could get to these advanced features. And then one by one, they just disappeared as new switches came out. That feature set was just never built into that next gen switch, so you wouldn't be able to do that. Little things like it even had like you could go in here, and you remember this from enterprise switches. You can see when there's a break in a cable because it will tell you the cable length and stuff like that. Like, oh, this run should go to the next room. It says it goes 4 inches or whatever. It's like, this port has a problem.
Yeah, that seems crazy to me. Like the fact that you even if you go to the Ubiquity store and search for their stuff, they literally have stuff labeled Enterprise Edition stuff. Like this is the Enterprise version, and you're saying they're stripping out like enterprise features. Why? Like
cost savings and not wanting to support it. They never had documentation, so you just had to find. I think there was a GitHub page for a long time that had all of the secret unified commands and which switches supported them. And I guess you just didn't want to support that because the goal is to get everybody to use the controller to make IT easier, to have VLANs through little menus. And I mean, to some extent, as I said, it does make it easier because now I can go add a VLAN in Unifi, and it immediately, if I have 200 switches adopted, all 200 switches and all the access points supported on there all have that VLAN pushed across there. That is a whole lot harder to do in Cisco if you've never done it in Cisco before. It's a lot of, hey, we're going to SSH in and we're going to do this, but that requires a lot more skill because you have to be very skilled the command line to be able to do it. So now I don't have to have a Cisco engineer. I can watch some guy on YouTube make a video of how to set VLAN. Next thing it's pushed out to all my switches, and I'm like, I don't know, spent 15 minutes watching some dude on YouTube talk about it, and now it's deployed.
I think that I was just gonna say I think it's fair that the one thing I will say is while I might have some complaints about it, I do think that mixing up and kind of like trying to take a fresh take at the way the traditional infrastructure was managed is needed. Like I don't know if they hit the mark per se, but disruption needs to kind of happen for that because like little side note, this stuff from the outside looks complicated to do, and that's only because you've never done it before. But once you get in it and you realize this is all standards based and they're designed to work together, so I just need to understand this design language to make this do what I need to do. It's absolutely needed for us to have a completely different, fresh take on how networking is deployed and managed. Just don't know if they quite hit it with this, but
we got a super chat. Thank you so much. Your PCMD, I appreciate that. And he says, I'll start each of you. SMB, Unifi, Omada, or Alta Labs, and why? Am I brain farting? SMB?
Small business space.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Unifi, Omada, or Alta Labs?
I'm gonna go Unifi.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking networking, actual like
We're
layer
networking,
two.
we're not talking switches,
Yeah.
or we're talking switches and access points. We're not talking firewall. My problem with Omada, and Log4j is an easy example for me to point to, but there's definitely others. They're not exactly a company known for security. They have no bug bounty program. They've been called out, and even some of the older, it's funny, I never really thought about it until I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I reviewed one of their early, not Omada models, but still a TP-Link switch that you could VLAN hop on. They didn't secure the VLANs properly. You could just set the VLAN and push different VLANs and pop out and always get to the management interface no matter what, which by the way, also with HTTP and not HTTPS, you could also telnet in. If you could just set the IP, it just ignored port rules. And so I don't trust them in terms of security. I don't trust them to be on top of it. I feel like they copied Unifi, knocked the price down 15% and said, we're selling product. And like their documentation is not good. It may be better now, but when I reviewed it, the documentation was quite poor and very inaccurate. The controller download links were confusing because they had two different versions and weren't clear which one, because see previous note of bad documentation. And that doesn't lead me to think that if there was a security vulnerability in it, that one, you would know who to report it to, because when there has been problems with TP-Link routers, Pwn found some problems in them when they ran the last one. And I think one of the comments was getting a hold of TP-Link. Like, we tried telling them, no one replied, so here's our disclosure. And they didn't find anything specifically Omada. It was a different model, but it's still the same company doing it. It's kind of this, we don't care, versus Unifi has an entire bug bounty program, pays out handsomely, and very much stays ahead of the curve when it comes to having patches at the ready prior to disclosures and good write-ups. The most recent security vulnerability with their switches had a good write-up from them of what the exploit was, and they had the patch before the write-up. So that's the kind of what you want to see. I think Alta Labs shows promise. They just sent me their switch, so I got that, and I have a couple of their access points. My problem with them is they're a cloud lock-in. They're a startup company that locks you to their cloud. There's a lot of
that's
competition.
what I was trying to think of. I couldn't think of before. Ingenious, their stuff that they had sent me.
My NDA's expired. I got stories.
Yeah, so I did the video on the Ingenious stuff, and it was basically like, yeah, this is pretty cool, but you know, you're locked to the cloud. Like, everything is, if the cloud goes down, you literally can't touch your network, you can't change anything. And the rep was like, oh hey, we're sending you some of our sort of like step down from their enterprise stuff. I can't remember what it's called. But that's like locally configurable. So it's literally sitting in a box right there. I haven't opened it. I don't even know what's in there that I was going to mess with. But yeah, when you said cloud only, that's what that reminded me of.
It's particularly hard. And I see Cody mentioned that Alta's got subscriptions. So what they told me they're doing is they're going to have the cloud, but then they're going to upsell you on more features of their cloud to do more things. And that's fine. And I think that's a better, more sustainable business model than cloud free only, but you're still a startup. And how can I deploy this at a client from a startup company, even if it works wonderful? And that's cool that you figured out Wi-Fi and you got a good transmission, good coverage. Chris from Crosstalk did a little bit more in-depth review than I did of testing the speed, and he said it did get slightly higher than Unifi, but slightly, not like double the speed. So cool, you've matched the big guy in the market. But what'd you do better than them? Because for me to switch something that, I've probably spent, and I'm working on my 2023 version of this, but last year I did a video, and we spent last year something around the lines of $300,000 worth of Unifi equipment total for the year that we bought and deployed, all switches and access points. How do I go spend that with another company? Because if that cloud goes down, I have a really big legal problem of I have to run around, and some of these sites we've flown out to set up the Wi-Fi there, and if it suddenly goes down and it can't be managed anymore and not supported, I'm in a lot of, they expect a level of support. And if Unifi closed their doors today, the controller works. I still have control of the Wi-Fi. I can start thinking about another solution. But if that cloud goes down, those things are bricks. And I mean, they'll stay in the last known state provided, because they default do this. The default option is if they lose cloud connection, they turn off. You can override that.
Whoa, that's a default setting?
Yeah. I know.
How did that get past them? I got an idea.
know.
Let's turn off when the internet goes offline. Let's just turn them off.
Don't need to be on. And I'm like, guys, that's really unacceptable from a from a standpoint of how am I supposed to trust the product outside of a home lab? If I had it in a couple of people's houses, my friends would be, "Hey, the thing broke, you sold me," and I'd go, "Okay," but I can't sell a large scale project with that.
Yeah, that reminds me, like it's so similar to the I just did a video on a cloud hosting startup, and I knew that video was going to have mixed reviews because A, it's a small company, B, it was a sponsored video, and C, it's cloud stuff. And people, you mentioned cloud, and that's just automatic, like negative connotation associated with cloud stuff. And I mean, I said in the video, I'm like, I it's a small company. It's hard to say, yeah, move your business to this. Like, I can't legitimately say that. I can say, yeah, this is cool. I like it. It's a small company. They don't have the track record for me to, put all my eggs in that basket yet. So, and especially in terms of network, like you were saying, especially if it's a startup and you tell a business to go deploy their entire network on this and it goes down, who are they going to come back and say, dude, why'd you tell me to do that?
I did a video on Cujo, Firewall, and Watson was the other one, and it's Cujo and Watson. I called it Broken Cloud Promises, and they were two startups that were really well funded. I think in the Kickstarter was over half $500,000 for one of them, for a firewall company, just to build these little small firewalls. They all started around the same time because Firewall was one of them. They still exist. And the other ones were the Cujo and the privacy Watson device. It was really confusing. They were trying to create a mesh network. So instead of subscribing to a VPN service, your traffic would just poke out of all these different locations, and everyone shared some type of weird mesh VPN. So we don't know, as long as all of you are part of the Watson cloud or whatever. They had some weird vision. They got funded for like $400,000, but both of them went out of business, and the devices, because they were tied to that cloud interface, that's how you managed them. That device became a brick that you bought because it was not just the backing of it. I think the device was like $300 or $400 for the firewall, and it was all cloud managed. And it's just, because the most common firewall outside of the ones people have mentioned so far that people ask me about on my channel, because I talk a lot about firewalls, is the Firewall, which is a neat little consumer device. I don't have no hate for it, but it's a consumer device that you manage with a phone. By the way, the phone, obviously, because you have to have an app store, you have to be registered with Google, registered with Apple, and you guys know how app stores work. I have to have that app supported, and then it has to reach out through the app, usually cloud fronting or whatever, back to their back-end servers that come back in to manage the firewall. So you're not talking to the firewall directly when you set it up. It requires cloud infrastructure to function. And that's my concern with it. It's like, it's a consumer device. People always ask, Tom, why would you deploy that to your clients? They say they're for businesses. I'm like, once again, they're a startup, but they're a few years old now. So they're more mature than a startup. But they have a free forever cloud that scares me, because without a model behind it, I think about the business aspect. Will they last?
Yeah. Can we just agree that funding firewalls via Kickstarter is probably not a great idea?
Yeah.
Well, of all the Kickstarters that I've had that I've never gotten, the actual thing that I was backing, I just feel like that's a scary proposition to have.
Yeah, it is. And I'll throw out there Open Mesh. I think I might, if you Google enough, you can probably find Tom talking about Open Mesh. I can't remember if I had my YouTube channel or did any videos on it, but Open Mesh around 2014 was a competitor to Unifi. And we checked them out. We thought they were cool. They had their cloud free forever. And you're going, well, that sounds cool. They became popular, right? And they're successful, and we can go to their website, right? Of course, they're gone, and the devices are in whatever state they were in. They actually got bought by Datto, and when Datto bought them, Kaseya bought them, and immediately the terms were all violated of free cloud forever. It turned into a subscription model overnight. Like, Datto's like, it's a subscription model now. And they're like, well, we thought it was free forever. Well, it was, and it was forever to the life of that company. And the life of that company is now gone because it's owned by Datto. And they had switches and everything else.
Do you think there's like a worrying trend moving forward of more companies moving to more either cloud hosting in general or just straight up subscription based, services for their
there's
stuff?
A push for it because we have easy access to what they call risk capital. And that basically means VCs are like, they can't make money just by sitting money in a bank because interest rates are low. So what do? They look for unicorns that they can just fling money at, build unsustainable business models. But they know the way they can only sustain it is you can't get a startup funded. If you said, I was going to let people self-host their controller and sell them stuff, they're going, well, I'm not funding that dumb idea. Where's your lock-in?
Where's your money? Where's the revenue stream?
Yeah, where's the revenue stream? How do we capture the market with really low capital and then raise the prices once we've screwed all the competition out? That's the business plan we're willing to fund. So,
Adobe.
Yeah, there's a lot of that push. So my friend Jay McBain, he used to work for Forresters. They're kind of like Gartner and do research. Now he works for Canalys, and they just did their big, enterprise market summary. 70% of companies within the next year. I loved it because I shared this on LinkedIn. I was so excited because we're seeing this trend in some of the consulting. 70% of enterprise companies plan to move their stuff out of the cloud. They are done with it because it's too expensive. The prices have gone up. And they just said basically renting people's computers or other people's computers is not turning out that good. Has not been a good security play. And start seeing Microsoft's latest debacles.
Oh God, yeah.
I think it probably also has something to do with just hosting stuff on your own being more affordable. I mean, processors and servers in general becoming more powerful, more affordable. And even the push with ARM and being able to hyperscale certain things and just being able to scale out with, how popular just deploying stuff through Docker or Kubernetes and how easy that's gotten to where you don't need a giant team of engineers to support this stuff. You can hire a couple of dudes and boom, you have
And I think that's a really good point. Is Kubernetes and these large scale orchestration tools have become easy to use. And I think it was always the myth. That myth was, told to us by the guy selling me the AWS cloud infrastructure going, man, I have a team that you don't have access to. You can just, leverage my team for magic infrastructure. And of course, they eventually dumbed it all down to my favorite, most hated buzzword in the enterprise server market, which is serverless services, where we don't expose infrastructure. We just give you the top level of it because it's serverless. No, there's a server under there and I'm renting it from you. And I don't know that it's well run. And so far the companies have proved it's not well run.
Yeah, that repatriation stuff is an interesting thing because I've seen many businesses look at it and go, this is the future. The CIO read it in a magazine that says the cloud is the answer. And then they made it too easy. And because it was a operational expense versus capital expenses, it lands differently. And they go, yeah, we can get more of that. Go ahead. Let's buy some more of that cool storage and let's keep putting more services in there. And I mean, as somebody who my background was in like real data centers, like getting hands on service, and I love that stuff. Like that's my thing. So I feel kind of good that they're like, oh, that trend wasn't so great. I guess we just decided just to shift to buying stuff to sending it all to Microsoft and Amazon and Google. But I mean, it's what runs Microsoft's books, right? Almost all of Microsoft's major profit now is just in Azure, and they don't even know how it all works anymore.
I'll share my personal experience. Trey says so easy, even Radal can do it. That's very true. If I can get it up and running, then I sure hope a business can hire someone to do the same. But it's crazy that you mentioned that 70% of companies have reported that they're moving away from cloud. Because my personal job, like I said, I work in the IT department for a pretty large company. We just had a talk about how we want to move stuff to the cloud. And it's not surprising. It's a long story. I'm not going to go into the full backstory of all this, but we have an issue with every couple of years we have a new initiative. It's the same thing, but they call it something else. A new acronym where they come in and get the feedback of all the employees and say, what do we need? What can we change? We're listening to you. And it's always, we need access to this data. We need more data. We need this. So what they do is they take what we have. My team supports it. They put that on the back burner. We bring in something new and sexy. We deploy that out. Some other groups brought in to support it. It eventually gets passed down to us, rinse and repeat. And now we have a slew of Microsoft SQL servers. We have a slew of Oracle servers. We have Pi. We have a Oracle data lake. We have all these different things. And they're like, yeah, but you know what? I think we're going to start moving stuff to the cloud. And I'm like, oh boy, just throw another thing on there that we're going to support. And it's just become a huge mess. And if they want to move everything to the cloud, I don't care. I'm not writing the checks. Cool. But man, is it frustrating.
Tell him to go. Granted, he's a little eccentric, but the founder of Basecamp, I believe it's at hey.com/blog is where he posts. They talk about moving. Basecamp's pretty big product, pretty big cloud thing. They talk about running on their own infrastructure and getting out of the cloud and unraveling themselves from AWS and saving several $1 million a year in doing it. And I want Patrick from Serve the Home to do an updated one, but he's got from 2020 a topic of how they moved a lot of the Serve the Home infrastructure off the cloud into a colo, and he does his calculations. He doesn't just say he saved money. He even includes drive time to the data center at a high-tech California rates of pay. And it's crazy when you start really doing it. He's like, yeah, we don't visit the data center that often, even to replace drives. So we calculated how much cost it was, did the analysis, and we're saving a fortune over what our AWS expenses used to be.
I need to get in on this. David says, I found out large companies, there's a swinging pendulum. Someone comes in, moves to the cloud, gets a bonus. Someone reverses it, saves money, also gets a bonus.
It is.
I need to slip my way somewhere into that pendulum.
Yeah. You got to get titled as a consultant. Then you don't actually have to do any work. You just tell people what to do and collect your check.
The funny thing is my actual title is IT consultant, but I'm not a consultant. I'm a salaried employee. Why we have titles called consultants or not is beyond me. Mr. Techno Tim in here with the super sticker $5 donation. Thank you so much, Mr. Techno Tim. I appreciate you.
There are some things that I wholeheartedly think should go to the cloud and stay in the cloud, and those would be things like email. Exactly. If you're hosting email locally, if you're an on-premise Exchange or on-premise, I don't know, if you're just using Postfix, and you should get out of that. You should.
I tried that once. I tried dabbling in self-hosting an email server once, and I was like, nah.
I did it from 90. I was a mail server admin starting around 98, and I finally retired it all in around. I did this for businesses in the enterprise space, but yeah, I can't remember when I surrendered even my servers. It was probably around 2014 for even my personal ones, maybe 2015. I finally got a couple of my personal ones off the maybe a little bit later, but for the most part, it was winding down. And my business moved to it. It was just a couple extra personal domains I had. I'm like, I'm going to keep hosting these. And after so many problems and security issues, I said, why am I doing this? Like, no one even cares that I'm doing this. Even I got to the point where I just there's a security problem. I'll patch it later because it broke. I'm turning it off. No one really emails me that anyways.
It's so cheap to get a cloud hosting mail service. Like I'm using Proton for mine, and it's like insanely cheap. It's like $15 a year or something like dumb. Mm-hmm. I would gladly pay $15 a year to not have to deal with hosting it myself.
And email is a good example because it's the original federated protocol. You have interoperability between all these servers because of the way the domain and mail records work. It's kind of cool when you look at it from that structure. It's the universal. All I have to know is your domain and your email, and I can send it each. I don't have to know the underlying server technology. This is what's allowed competition in that space to keep the pricing low because there's so many good companies offering, well, there's bad ones too, but there's good companies offering email services, and it's a competitive marketplace to keep it inexpensive. And I think it's a rational thing to keep in the cloud.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it earlier in the stream that there's like this negative stigma attached to cloud stuff. When you say something's cloud hosted, I feel like immediately it's like, I'm not doing that. I want everything local. I want all this. I'm like, I get that. I mean, I really do. I know people like to have all their stuff local. They don't want it to touch anybody else's machines. I get that. But I'm in the boat of like, I don't mind hosting stuff in the cloud. Like, I'll throw some servers on there. I have some backup services deployed in the cloud, and I'm fine with it. And some people swear by it, like I will never deploy anything in the cloud. I don't. Either way, doesn't matter to me. I'm just in the boat of like, man, if someone gets access to my static website that I'm hosting in the cloud, and that's the worst thing that I can think of, then I'm okay with that. Like, it's not a huge deal. So, I don't know. Are you guys, what camp are you in terms of like cloud hosting?
It's part of my the home lab for me is scratches a whole bunch of itches. One is the pride of doing it myself, right?
Yes.
Having that run.
Mhm.
That's a big part of it. There's the satisfaction there. That's how I justify it to my wife and the power, that kind of stuff. But and the learning I get from actually working on these things and then being able to take that knowledge and bring it into my day job. The thing is, I don't know if I have anything like outside of the stuff I do with my YouTube channel and holding and maintaining that data and all that kind of stuff. I will say that I don't really host anything that deserves to cost a monthly payment outside of electricity. So I have no justification for paying a third party to host it. And that's kind of the hard limit. Like, what do I have that would be more beneficial to not have locally and then pay a monthly fee on top? So I'm not really haven't adopted much in that realm.
I think a lot of it for me is, even if I host it, like I have some things in Linode, have some things in DigitalOcean, but it's not cloud lock-in. They're Linux servers. I can clone them to another hosting provider, and that's the real important part. Even if I loosely will call it cloud, it's more the non-proprietary standard Linux server stuff. And we were just, me and Jay from Linux TV. He's been on a kick. I stayed with Debian. He was on Ubuntu, and then he got mad at Ubuntu things, and he's now moved his life to Debian. So he rebuilt his forums and rebuilt the Home Lab Show website that we host. He blew it all away and rebuilt it all with Debian instead of Ubuntu. But it's not cloud lock-in, because it's what's kind of cool about it is like we can swap the operating system. We can reload the operating system on these servers that we have access to. And, I even have data center access here where I'm starting to put a few things, which is kind of like self-hosting. I just know there's enough bandwidth that I can't just have it at my house, because like my forums need to be more available because of the volume of traffic they get. Same with my website, gets a volume of traffic that I can't just host it at home. So I host it where I have colo access, but it's still on my hardware. And I think that's the important part, because you're just renting some cabinet space and some connectivity and some electricity from them. But if I don't like them, I can yank it out. There's actually several data centers within a 20-mile radius that I can just move it over to.
Yeah, no, I totally get the whole, like, you want to self-hosting. It's cliche. It's like, it's fun. It's fun to host your stuff. I enjoy it. I like spinning it up on my hardware. Like, that's why I have a YouTube channel. That's why we're all kind of here, right? But I also enjoy like messing with different cloud providers and seeing what they have to offer, and that part is fun to me too. So I don't know.
It's
I'm
all
in the
fun. We're
camp of
technologists, so this is all interesting and fun. I won't lie, playing with all these different things, spinning up things in there, being able to rent GPUs out of places like AWS. There's some cool things you can do. So there's excitement I have for some of that. I don't do it as much, but I have a lot of friends who do. Building language model sets, cracking passwords. Why build a password cracking rig? They can just go spend a few dollars and run it in the cloud for the time they want to crack something. They're like, there's a cost with it, and they don't have to own the hardware.
Yeah, that totally 100% makes sense. And yeah, and you mentioned it, like, obviously the stuff that's not proprietary, like, yeah, I'm going to go cloud host something that's going to spin up, whatever flavor of Linux I want. They can spin up a K3S cluster for me. I'm going to deploy my stuff there. I don't like it. I can literally move it over in like a minute.
Now, here's the idea. Now that we'll throw this out here. What if there's a future like this? And I think we could get here. What if we had a way to look at a competitive marketplace of all these different cloud providers? There's enough of them. And then we could do a lift and shift, so we could take our workloads and dynamically rebuild them in whatever cloud's the cheapest that week and just move them around.
That sounds like you're on a list now. Some executives just heard you talk about that, and they're gonna be knocking on your door.
Who wants to throw money at
I mean,
my
that'd be
door?
cool. Like, just imagine if it automatically did that. Like, oh, you have an account with these 10 cloud providers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cheaper now. It's like stocks. Like,
Yeah.
they
Who's giving me
bid
the best
into a
price?
market.
Yeah, and then
That's-
you're using Terraform, Kubernetes, everything. So it's all infrastructure as code, and it just rebuilds my infrastructure, reattaches my data store to whichever cloud provider's got the best price that week.
It reminds me of is I work for a utility company, and the way we do power for our utility is we have this overarching entity, a nonprofit, and all of the utilities that have signed up to work within that entity bid their power in every day. Like in the morning, they say, we have these generators. This is how much we can provide at these costs that are negotiated depending on where you're at. And you bid it in, and the next day they come back and say, okay, you turn on these, you turn on these, you do this. If we need you, keep your stuff running in case we need you as backup. It's like I that immediately made me think of like if there's a cloud environment like that, it's like, okay, spin it up in here. Oh, you're running this. You need a GPU for this. Oh, we'll spin you up over here. And it becomes this huge, like crazy automagic system, which would be cool.
It's kind of neat. We can get there. We're in the infancy of this. We'll look at this and go, this is so primitive, just like how we look at the 1920s electrical grids and things like that. It was so primitive, and we're so much more advanced. For like, look at how simple everything was back then. And someone will look at 50 years from now and go, man, it's so much more magical now, and this ChatGPT thing just does it for us, or whatever the future silliness is.
I love your optimism.
Yeah. I do have to bounce. I loved hanging out with you guys.
For sure.
So this is definitely a whole lot of fun. But you
carry on. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
And you're hopping on with Jeff, right?
What's that?
You're hopping on with Jeff, right?
Yeah, hopping on with Jeff. He got a cancellation, so I'm doing back-to-back live streams. So
yeah. So if you want some more Tom Lawrence, go hit up Mr. Craft Computing.
Yep, he's next. He got in a pinch, and I already have his show notes, so I told him, okay, cool. So we were already talking about the topic. He's got the spicy topic we avoided.
Oh, I saw his live stream. The first thing is the spice that everyone knows about. So,
well, because me and him were already chatting about it, that's why he says, "Can you just come on because you know about it?" Because I said, "Yeah."
Yeah. All right. Well, have fun, everyone. Right. Say bye to Tom. Give him a nice thank you for gracing us with his presence. And,
absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Hopefully this isn't the last time.
Oh, yeah, invite me on again. I'm not usually doing too much at night. So.
Perfect. Noted.
All right. Take care, guys.
Awesome. Thank you. Yep. Woohoo! And then there were two. I like that it's funny, like marketing it as like this crazy futuristic like idea of having just a huge pool of cloud providers that are automatically kind of moving your services around. That sounds cool. Honestly, we got the Kubernetes expert in chat, so we'll just hire Mr. Techno Tim to handle all that back end stuff.
Yeah, if you can go ahead and automate that entire process, that'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be great. If you could go ahead and so the amount of times I've had someone come to me and be like, I have this awesome idea for an app. You're a developer, right? And it's just this crazy thing. They're like, you could do that, right? Like
you do it in the weekend, right? I mean,
do you have a large checkbook? Do you have a large account? Like, so, yeah, you can certainly ask me a question. That's what it's here for. Go ahead, drop it in chat, and I'll
let's see it.
Hopefully, try to answer. But yeah, that I know they're gonna have some spicy stuff to talk about. We can kind of dip our toes in it if you want to.
I would love to if you want to. I'm not. That's kind of a departure from what we were talking about earlier. But I don't know if the chat wants to talk about the spicy spice as well.
I'd say we nerded out a bit for on some networking stuff for a while. We can indulge ourselves. Here, I'll make a banner for it. Just plain and simple.
Let's see what this.
There we go.
Yeah, we don't need to say anything else. That's a perfect title.
Yeah, that's oof.
It's oof talk
That
time.
so I'm sure everyone in the chat knows the whole thing that's going on. If you don't, I will very briefly try to summarize it. Gamers Nexus, Steve posted a video about a 45-minute video, which is pretty standard for him, but he posted a video about how there were two issues. One is that LTT is posting stats and information that is just wrong. The other issue was the whole Billet Labs situation where if you saw the video, this small startup company sent a water block and a GPU, a 3090 Ti to LTT to test. They did a video on it. At the end of the video, Linus concluded this thing doesn't really work. The machining's cool, it doesn't really work. Too expensive, whatever. Turns out he used the wrong GPU on it. So obviously it didn't work like it was supposed to. Then when confronted about it, he basically said, yeah, we could have went back and tested it with the real way, but my outcome wouldn't have changed because it's still expensive. So even if it was good, I can't recommend it. So those were the two issues. Linus came back on the forum, made a forum post about there was some gaslighting there, some kind of half-assed kind of pseudo apology type thing, and it was a whole mess. And then Gamers Nexus made another video about the response being crap, and then the LTT video came out about how they need to do better this morning. And then in the midst of that, Madison, one of their former employees, came out with just a huge Twitter thread about how the work environment was extremely toxic. It's If you haven't seen that Twitter thread, it's bad. And then just recently, The Verge reached out to Linus for a comment on that, and he said, was it Linus or the new CEO that said, this really isn't consistent with? I think it was Linus that said it wasn't consistent with what I've heard, what I've experienced in our practices. If this stuff is true, we're going to figure it out. We're hiring a third-party independent firm to come in and investigate, which I think is good. So that's the whole thing. That's in a nutshell what's happened. So yeah, what was your reaction? I guess take us through the last day of this roller coaster.
Well, let's break them down because I think that's a fair deal. So we'll talk with the inconsistencies and the incorrect data. That's one chunk, right? We'll talk about Gamers Nexus. The next one was the Billet Labs situation and how that was done, and then I guess then the LTT response. The fourth thing here with Madison, that's pretty rough to read through that, and that's heartbreaking. And I encourage anyone who hasn't read through it and who wants to read through it, I mean, buckle up because it's upsetting. It's just the kind of stuff that if you knew someone that you cared about go through something like that, you would be disgusted and you'd be horrified.
Yeah, that is terrible.
So you and I have been living this through a lot of different means, right? So we've been looking through Discord. We've been reading that stuff that's happening, reading the news, and as probably many people have. And it wasn't up until this morning, I think, that I finally came up with a final thought on the issue with their bad stats, their bad research, and their unwillingness to actually correct things unless they're really pressured to do it. And I think I can sum up my opinion with that as, you and I are as good as our word, right? We do things with an honest intent to do so. And if we consistently do bad things, then we're not really worth it. And we have that responsibility to our viewers and the people in our community that when we say something and we're consistent about it, that it be right. So I feel like that's pretty damning, especially from a mogul like Linus Tech Tips and LMG, and the fact that they're trying to become this Consumer Reports of computer stuff, which I think Steve probably takes a little
it's definitely personal.
Yeah.
It's 100% personal on that. And yeah, I mean, And that's the whole thing. Like before the lab stuff, I mean, if there were some errors,
Errors
whatever.
happen. No, for sure. No, errors happen. Right.
But the fact that they have spun up this labs and they've made it very clear that we are going to be the forefront of accurate testing and reporting for electronics. They've stated that multiple times. Mm-hmm. So when you state that, and then you're consistently making errors from tests that they say in the videos, this was run by our labs, that makes sense. I mean, you can not like the way Steve handled it and called him out publicly about it, didn't reach out, whatever. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, those are facts. He was right. These are errors that they're making. And that's, it needs to be fixed. And I think pretty easy way to do that is to stop rushing out videos. I mean, it's a pretty simple fix. Yeah. And I think that took up most of Steve's video, but I think that was the minor issue. I think what got people up in arms was the whole Billet Labs situation. I think that was more telling. Not only that, but the way Linus responded to it. I think that was also an issue. His
lack of willingness to take responsibility and what felt like really just strong indifference. Like, I don't care. This is the way it is. So you let me answer the first one. What is your take on the Billet Labs, and the whole deal?
I as much as I am a fan of Linus Tech Tips, a channel, I've watched it forever. I enjoy it. He handled this so poorly. From the video, you can't. Okay, I'll start with the video. He in the video, this startup company sent him a water block with the graphics card to test it on. I guess they misplaced the graphics card or didn't have it the day of filming, so they grabbed a 4090 and did all their testing on a 4090 instead of a 3090 Ti, and eventually concluded, yeah, this thing doesn't work that good, which obviously is wrong. You can't. They should have known, of all people, you can't take a water block designed for one product, put it on a different product, and expect it to work well. Like, right. That, I know they're not dumb. Like, I know they know that, and that has to be a product of fast-paced, just moving way too fast and trying to get these videos out. And I think Linus even made a video about how they film their stuff, like a week in the life of, and it's just insane. He films something, someone grabs them, okay, you got to film this. Here's your script, go. Like, that's not gonna work. So the video itself was bad, and I think what made it worse is that this is a startup company. This isn't like EK Water Block or like Asus or some huge company sent him something and he, misinterpreted it. Like, that doesn't matter. Like, Asus doesn't care. Like, yeah, it would suck, but it's not going to hurt their bottom line or anything. A startup, to have the biggest tech YouTube channel feature your product is like make or break. That's like a dream for a startup. And to basically, for them to have to watch him not blatantly, but
tear it apart.
Just tear it apart. Yeah, and he didn't even do it right. Like, he didn't even test it right, so it's got to be frustrating. Then to come out and say, we aren't going to retest it because it would cost us a few $100s in employees' time, and my opinion on whether to buy it wouldn't change. I don't think his opinion on whether to buy it is what mattered. I think showing that a startup can make a product that works was the most important part. So it doesn't matter. I don't think, even if Linus showed this thing is awesome, it's not like people are going to rush out and buy it anyway.
It's not even for sale. So
right, yeah, you can't even buy it.
Yeah.
So that didn't matter. I don't know how that, maybe he has over the years gotten so far out of touch with these things, because I mean, I've watched him for a long time, and he's always relatively seemed down to earth, whether you like his personality or not. He seems to know tech from real expensive stuff to the cheaper stuff. He's kind of always dabbling in it. He seems relatively down to earth, but this is just like, dude, what are you doing? And then to come out and have the opportunity to say, yeah, I messed up. We should have tested that. That was wrong. I apologize. He kind of doubled down. I was like, yeah, I don't get it. Like, I mean, yeah, it wouldn't have mattered. So that and the fact that they auctioned it off when they shouldn't have. I mean, I get it. I mean, that sucks. And it obviously was a huge communication error because
Sure.
I know people are pinning this on Linus, but I don't think he personally got an email that said like, hey, we want the block back. And then he's like, haha, no, I'm going to auction it off. I don't think that's what happened. It doesn't make it any better, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But it's obviously bad. And obviously just chalking it up to they're moving way too quick. The communication's terrible. And something needs to change. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's systemic mismanagement through and through, right? Like I agree with you, especially on the water block thing. Like it was more of an insult to injury and just kind of laid bare publicly how disorganized and how breakneck things must be. And I think you're right. Somebody was probably walking through all of the metal shelves that he shows off in multiple videos and is like, that one, we'll give that one away. That one, we'll do that one. And someone just grabbed this thing and that just happened. So it's crazy.
Would you say that they're adding their own bias within their review? It is a review, so I guess it's already, but just your perspective on it. That's hard. I mean, unless you're approaching a review in the terms of, I'm a robot, here are the stats, here are the specs, here are the exact numbers, do with that what you want, which is kind of the Gamer's Nexus approach. I don't think Linus has ever been kind of that approach. I think it's always more personal touch to it. And obviously, if you're a person, you're going to have biases whether you try to or not. So, I mean, when I do a review of a product, I try to be I try to show as little bias as possible. But I'm always going to have biases towards things, certain things I like, certain things I don't like, whether I realize it or not. So I don't think it depends on how biased you're being, I guess, and you can argue that till you're blue in the face, but I don't think you're ever going to get away from having a totally unbiased review on a product. I think you can try to minimize it, but at the end of the day, I think everyone's a little bit biased towards it. So,
yeah, it depends on what your approach on a review is supposed to be. Like if you're reviewing something from a personal perspective, like I like this phone because I use this thing, then that review is about you and how you see it, and you influence that. But I think you're right. We all have to recognize that everything we look at through a lens, right? That's just who we are. And that decision on what you think of something can be made up the instant you pull something out of a box sometimes. And you really have to work against that. And you're like, oh, I just don't like the way this thing looks, but it's not what it's about. It's about what it does. And but when you aim to become a reference point as a part of your brand, that's when things get messy, right? And it makes it far more complicated that way.
yeah. And then the bombshell that got dropped with the Madison situation, which no names were sent out. No one knows who it was. I mean, we can all speculate and kind of make our guesses in our mind of who were the culprits and who she was talking about in those tweets. But yeah, I don't know how they can let a work environment get like that. Like, I've never worked for a small company. I mean, Linus, depends on who you ask. They're a big company or they're a small company. But I work for a pretty large company, and there is no way anything like that would fly. I've seen minor versions of that stuff happen, and that immediately gets taken care of.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a huge risk, a financial risk to the company too, right? Like you don't mess around with that sort of stuff. That you get ahead of it. You have policies and procedures, and you make sure that you take care of it to the extent that you can to protect the company and the individual involved, right? It's crazy.
Yeah, they slammed Blizzard on this for the WAN show. Meanwhile, the Madison situation was going on. Shame on them.
Right.
And that's one thing that, in retrospect, that does look bad. I don't know how much Linus knew. He had to have known something. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know the entire situation, who's exactly at fault, who knew about what and to what extent. That's impossible for me to know. So I'm not even going to pretend to speculate on it. But when you're the CEO and something bad happens, it's your responsibility, whether you like it or not. Just for the
You're
same
at the
reason,
helm.
if good things happen, you get a huge bonus. Like, that's how it works. That's what comes with being a CEO. So it whether he meant to or not, that's what happened, and he's gonna have to deal with it. And I think they're taking a good step of bringing in a third party, because you can't come out and say, yeah, we investigated this internally, and yeah, we decided that we did nothing wrong. So
Right.
there we go. Chalk it up. We're good. So
Yeah,
that's
when I read through the tweets and the accounts that she provided, it sounded like, and this is probably in line with the hard and fast approach that they just run it at their breakneck speeds, but it really did feel like a little company that was more locker room talk than should ever have been, and that leads to this. And there's other accounts in too where she mentions assault and and just the kind of like social behavior where there's a lot of cutthroat going on. Like, people are recording themselves to make sure they protect themselves in case something bad happens. Like, it doesn't sound like a great place to work. And if I could just say one thing, I've always said, because I've never really been a big fan of Linus in general, because I've just never felt that he was professional enough. He's always been pretty crass just by default. But it kind of felt like my thought was they've always kind of seemed like a YouTube sweatshop, right? Where they're just pumping out content, and,
well, they wear that on their sleeve. It's not something they hide. They even made a video about it. They even interviewed all their employees and let them say, yeah, this is basically a sweatshop. I mean, no one ever used that term, but every single one, you even saw in Steve's video, was like, yeah, we produce too much stuff, and it's too much. And that's what everyone is always saying. So it's funny that they can be so transparent about it and so aware of a glaring issue, yet do nothing to solve
just
it. And I
accept
think
the status quo.
I mean, we all know why. I mean, the more videos you make, the more money you make.
Yeah.
So when and it's not like me or you where you get maybe one sponsor every now and then
Right.
you pump out a video and you get your money in like a month. They have sponsors probably lined up for months, if not a
Multiples
year.
A video, right?
Yeah, and for them to say, oh, we're cutting back from what across all their channels, like 15, 20 videos a week to 10, that's like almost half your revenue in ads and sponsorships gone. Right. And when you're spending money to grow, that's money you can't afford to lose. So I get it from a money / CEO perspective, but they're finding out now. Let's fuck around, find out. That's what they're finding out now. So
yeah, that's for sure.
It's blown up in their face.
That's for sure.
So I don't envy that situation at all, especially for the new CEO, man. Imagine coming in. He started like a month ago. Yeah. And this is what gets dropped in his lap.
He walks in, takes his jacket off, hangs it on the door. He's like, okay. And then he turns around, takes the jacket off the door, says, I'll see you.
Yeah, it's the meme.
I'm out.
Yeah, the Simpsons meme. Dude, it's, and I just don't, I mean, I understand it. Everyone knows Linus has an ego. This isn't the first time he's been put in the spotlight for his reaction to something that the community has expressed a concern over. And he's done it again. Instead of just taking, I mean, and you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, kind of, when something like this comes out, everyone's pressing you like, Release the response. You need a response. What do you have to say about this? Constantly, just from legitimate to personal attacks, it becomes so much that you're forced to respond. And
Right.
he just does so in like the worst ways. Instead of just saying, yeah, there are issues. It looks like we are moving too fast. This is something that we've noted, something that needs to change. We'll work on it in terms of Billet. I've reached out to them. I've offered to compensate them on that. I apologize. We will take the video down and do what's right. That's all he had to do. Literally that.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And he didn't. He went on some long kind of weird tangent where he was like starting to apologize but didn't, then started like gaslighting people for getting mad. I'm like, dude, what? You've been here before. You've made this mistake before. Like, just stop.
Just take a minute, step back, take a breath, and evaluate it. Right? Just don't jump right to it and be like, oh, these are my people. I'm just gonna make them see that I'm right. I mean, he's like you said, he's been through this before, and it makes me wonder if he thought maybe this would all blow over super easy too.
I think it honestly would have if he just would have released a normal statement. I mean, whether you like it or not, people love drama. People love to be angry at shit.
We're talking about it.
Yeah, this is not any different. Like, people, rightfully or not rightfully so, are extremely angry about this. Whether it affects them or not, it doesn't matter. People like to be angry. And they're bringing up valid points. Obviously, there are rights to be angry in this situation, but and all he had to do was make a normal statement, and this would have blown over like everything else does. I mean, it's bad, but it's not like the company's going to blow up bad. Like, it really isn't that bad. It's bad for him personally, the way he handled it.
Yeah.
But if he handled like a normal person, this would have blown over. It really would have. Like, yeah, some of the things he did were bad, but like, they're really not that crazy bad. Like, I don't. So.
No, open mouth, insert foot kind of thing. Yeah. Just.
Yeah, I just. The things that. I equate this to. If someone brought it up, like Blizzard. Look at the shit that happened at Blizzard.
Oh, yeah.
Like, over years. So many people coming out. And people are still playing Diablo. People are still playing Call of Duty. No one cares. It blows over, which is unfortunate that freaking the CEO, I think he's still a CEO of Blizzard, can still sit there and be the CEO. It sucks, but it's going to blow over. And this is no different. This is such a smaller scale that it'll blow over. But obviously, if they want to make good on their promise on being a company that, you know, I don't know the exact words they use, but they want to be like a family. They want to treat everyone right. They want to make sure it's an upstanding company. Everyone's paid and treated. If they want to just do that, then make good on that promise.
I don't think I've ever met a company that didn't say they wanted to be.
Yeah, we're a family.
Yeah, we're a family. We're taking care of our people.
Just imagine you walk into your first day and they're like, "We're a sweatshop, so
so take a seat. Here's your mouse and keyboard."
Yeah, we don't give a shit about you.
Yeah,
get your shit done and go home.
Yeah, you're on probation. Get out the door. Yeah.
No, I get it.
I'm gonna ask you one more question about at least the Linus aspect of this, and that is, I was going over this with a buddy of mine, and he posited that, you know, if this was a big corporation and this had gone down like it would, you might see the exit of the CEO from that corporation, right? The figurehead might step down because that hurts your bottom line. And I don't know if anyone in the audience has seen any of the information about the sub loss and the float plane subscriber losses that Linus has seen. Do you think that this is a situation where we might see a step down, or do you think that it's just
step down from what? Because he's already stepped down as CEO.
Right.
Like,
but
stepping
I mean,
out completely? Just
like more like you disappear from camera, you let the company
absolutely
run.
Not.
You don't think so? You don't think it?
No, absolutely no. 0% chance he does that. He has too much pride in the company, in himself, to have this be his swan song in terms of his life's work. There's no way. I think he's finally, and all this maybe needed to happen to finally get him back to ground level and be like, okay, shit, maybe we do have a problem. We do need some shaking up. There is a culture problem here. It can't be just a bunch of bros going around sexually harassing female employees. Like that obviously needs to change. And if you're the CEO, acting CEO, and you're being stretched so thin that you don't know, like, even what video you're filming that day or what 2 videos you're filming that day, how the shit are you going to know what the bottom line is in terms of finances? How are you going to be able to handle HR complaints? Like, obviously that's for the dedicated HR team, but as acting CEO, you have to know these things too. And I guarantee you, he was not as plugged in as a CEO should be. So I think they already made the right move in appointing a new CEO. I think that's going to help because he's made it pretty clear that he's not like, he's not going to be on camera. He doesn't want to be on camera. I mean,
He just
we
wants
saw
to run
from
the business. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, I'm here to be a CEO. I do not want to be on camera. I'm here to do the things that should have been done. Linus, I don't think he's going to step away from the camera. I think he made a mistake, unless it comes out personally that he was heavily involved in this, which I don't think he was heavily involved in these things. I mean, that doesn't, from what I saw and what she said, that'd be extremely shocking if he was the one saying these things. But if he did, and it comes out in the independent audit, which would be funny for him to say, come in and investigate me if I did this stuff.
I would hope.
Yeah.
I mean,
so I don't think I've been wrong before in my life. My gut says that he wasn't the one personally doing this stuff. I have my ideas of who I think fits the bill for that type of stuff within LMG, but nobody cares. But yeah, if he does this right, he fixes, he comes out and says, yeah, we're too many videos. We're going to scale back on that. I've reached out to Billet. He's already started to make good on that, which kind of too little too late with that, but whatever. And if he comes back and, like they already said, investigating third party and do what's right from the investigation, then I don't see him stepping away. I mean, do you think he would?
No, I mean, I don't necessarily think he would. I think that's just kind of an interesting proposition, and I didn't think it would even be something to even debate until the Madison stuff happened, because that's the kind of stuff that will destroy or shake up a management organization in a company, right? Because they now show that they're not doing the right things in their jobs, and if there's not a big change, then they'll lose the faith of the people. And in the end, Linus's and LMG's success as a company have to do with the subscribers and the people who are watching their stuff. And if it turns out that if it's somebody big, inside of that org that did it, they'll be held to pay for it for sure.
Yeah. And Brendan brings up a good point. Is that the whole reason he employed the new CEO? He knew he was lacking in what a CEO should be. And that's the surprising part. Like, he knew. That's what I said before. They were very aware of the problems, but refused to fix it. I mean, bringing a CEO, that was a good step. That needed to happen. But the videos haven't slowed down. The problems have only gotten worse. And
Clearly.
Madison's experience, she's been gone for over a year now. I mean, I can't imagine the culture has changed much. I don't know if her experience was just her experience, or if there's going to be multiple people coming out with that type of experience. I don't know. I guess that's what they're going to find out in the investigation.
Right.
But again, the Madison stuff is terrible, but if you take that away, the other stuff that Steve brought up, at the end of the day, it's not that bad. I mean, yeah, it sucks. And Billet Labs was screwed over. It awful what happened to them. And I hope the reparations that he made was good enough. And at the end of the day, they're getting so much positive publicity from this.
Yeah, that's a fact. That's for sure.
So at the end of the day, all this is not that bad. They fix the timing. That's fine. This Billet Labs stuff's going to blow over. It's just going to hang on the investigation of this Madison stuff. So no one within LMG can come out and obviously say that. They're not going to say, guys, this isn't that bad. Relax. But I'm a nobody YouTuber, and no one cares what I say. So I can justifiably look back and be like, yeah, compared to some other stuff that people let blow over, this is nothing. So
it's the biggest shakeup we've seen in quite some time in the tech tuber space, right?
Yeah, and people, like I said, people love drama. People love getting angry. So if anything happens, instant, just I'm here. What are we angry at today, boys? I'm ready. So, and that's like kind of the social media mentality. So as long as you're not on the side of that, then the bad side of it, then you're good. So luckily I haven't been on that side of it. It would be very hard for me to get reported for sexual harassment in my company because I'm an employee of one.
Yeah.
I would have to sexually harass myself, and we're not going to get into that. So,
hey,
I need a soundboard.
Yes, you do. I expect that next live stream.
Yeah, really. Okay, well, is there any other topics? Did we burn through the Linus stuff? I don't think there was any other. There was
we hit the big ones today for sure.
Yeah, I think I saw Steve's response to Linus, and he, as you can agree or disagree with the way Steve went about it. You can like or dislike his approach to making videos and his personality on camera, whatever. Mm-hmm. But he called it out like it should have been called out, especially in the response, calling out Linus's response, because that was just so bad. Like, yeah. That's annoying, but yeah, I don't get it. It blows my mind that someone in that space for so long has made those errors before can just keep making the same error of having just bad responses to issues. So
yeah, I don't know, man. It's I will say that was something I found really interesting when it first broke. The one thing I found the most surprising, outside of like the allegation and everything, was how quickly two groups of people came to life. And there was the Defend Steve and the Defend Linus group. And there was just like these wars of, oh, well, Steve shouldn't have done that. Steve was being, jerk face Steve and everything. And then people are like, no, Linus is the bad guy here. Steve just shined a light on a dark place that had some crawly worms in it. Right. And it was just like, that was the fascinating thing, just to see people picking sides instead, just like, let's just sit back and just enjoy this.
Well, the part that kind of rubbed me the wrong way with Steve's video was in the beginning where he's like, guys, I really didn't want to have to make this video. It's a huge risk for me. Like, I don't know what's going to happen after I make this video. I'm like, dude, you know exactly what's going to happen with this. If there's anything people love more than LTT, it's hating LTT. So the fact that he came out and thought, he's not dumb. He's a very smart dude. He's been in YouTube forever. He knew people love to hate LTT and they love to hate big companies. Mm-hmm. So for him to break this news and pretend like it wasn't going to be received well I was like, dude, come on. This is going to be well received. Yeah. So I was shocked too when I went to the Linus the forums. How many people subscribe to the forums hate Linus? Like personally.
Yeah, that was like, amazing too.
Why are you here then? Like, I'm so confused. Like, you legitimately like hate him. Or like, I hope this company burns to the ground. He's an asshole. I'm like, shit, dude, okay. Like,
yeah, they've been waiting just for this opportunity to leverage their account on LTT forums. Yeah,
I don't think I dislike any YouTuber enough to hope that their channel burns and their company burns to the ground.
Yeah.
So that was surprising to me. And like I think we talked about this before. He's just polarizing. People love him, people hate him. So when stuff comes out like this, it's just blood in the water for people to hop in and jump on instead of him calmly and like an adult responding to things. He doubles down and shows off his ego, and that's where he gets in trouble. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not perfect. That's for sure. I don't know how I'd react in the situation either, but I do know that that wasn't the right way to do it. So
If you guys are ever wondering the right way to do it, it's not that.
yeah, it's not take to the forum and gaslight people. So
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. No, you're wrong.
yeah, oh, it's just so crazy. I'm excited to see what comes out of this, because at the end of the day, it doesn't affect me. I'm gonna still make YouTube videos. I'm still gonna go to work in the morning. Like,
Yeah.
doesn't affect me. So I'm just a bystander. I'll watch. I'll see what's going on, but it is what it is.
Should we call
Anything else?
I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't think I've got
I
anything.
think we've exhausted that topic. I'm sure there will be other things that come out that will warrant a response. Not for me, because no one cares, but I'm sure there will be back and forths, and some other YouTubers will make reaction videos and whatnot. But I've exhausted what I needed to say on this. Kind of got it off my chest, so I'm good with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we'll call it there. I'll go hop in and see what Jeff's talking about. Him and Tom are probably still on the topic of LTT at this point, so I'll dip in and see what they have to say. Everyone in the chat, thank you so much for joining. This was really fun. As an excuse, we gave you guys some networking talk just so we could talk about the LTT stuff. That was actually planned. We fooled you,
Surprise.
tricked. Yep, got you. You were all fooled. But no, I appreciate all you guys hopping in. Links down to Tom's channel. Obviously, you've seen Tom's channel. Link down to Rich's channel. Go check them out. Go subscribe. And Rich, I appreciate you hopping on again. It was fun.
Dude, it's my pleasure. We'll do this anytime you want.
As always. So, yeah, I'm going to hop out of here. I'm going to go dip in, see what kind of spice is going on over at Craft Computing. And I suggest you guys do the same. So, see you guys next time.
All right. See you guys.
Adios.